our great partners here at the YWCA on this special discussion on racial equity for the merchant community. So with that, I'd like to welcome Stacy Blake, the CEO of the YW, David Nice, Project Manager of Social Justice for the YWCA, Dr. Lucia Murphy, and Adam Hosey, both social justice mentors. So I will turn it over to our great partners here. Stacy, do you want to take it away?
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. We're going to start with introductions by our team, so I'm going to pass to Lucia.
Good morning, everybody. I am Lucia Murphy. I am known as Dr. Murph. I'm the managing principal at the Leadership Architect Group, and I've been doing leadership design here in Lancaster for about, 15 years. My why for participating in this is I am a bilingual, bicultural Mexican American, and I have experienced both overt and subtle racism, and so I put myself out there to see if I can help people get educated about this so somebody else doesn't have to.
Good morning. My name is Adam Hosey. I teach English, Black History, and Feminist History in Harrisburg School District, and I develop anti-oppression programs for the YWCA. I'm super excited to be here, knowing that this is an increasingly diverse community, and I love to see the diversity that I see downtown. In any way we can help make it a more inclusive space for everyone is something that's always interesting to me. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Nice. I'm project manager for social justice at YWCA Lancaster, and I have been an HR person and a training person for a long time. I considered myself committed to equity and social justice, and I have been honored and happy to have learned a lot in the last 3 years through my association with YWCA Lancaster, and I'm happy to be here this morning. And the other thing I'd add is that I've lived in the city of Lancaster since 1978.
Thanks, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with this great team. So I'm Stacy Blake. I'm the CEO at YWCA Lancaster, and I lead this agency for a very specific reason. It's all about the mission. Our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women, and these issues are of primary importance to me. My career has prepared me specifically for this moment, and what I'm most afraid of is not doing enough. But I'm not afraid of the challenges ahead. As you may know, here at YWCA, we've served the community for over 100 years. Our building at Lime and Orange is home to 50 women, men, and children every night. We are the county sexual assault prevention and counseling center, providing a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline and support for children and adults with no-cost counseling. We are the child care solution for 300 working families in the city and Penn Manor, and we support other parents who have court involvement with their families. Specifically, since the 70s, our one imperative has been eliminating racism, because we know empowering all women will require the end of racism. So recently, during the COVID shutdown, we invested in our signature program, the Racial Equity Institute, to update and retool for a hybrid delivery that now includes a self-paced online work in addition to some in-person sessions with physical distancing. We're committed to meet the community need for information right now by providing this deeply impactful material for the community every month at an affordable rate. And we've added a social justice book club, racial equity lunch and learns, community discussions, and more. You can always find more on our website. But I want to say one thing we have in common, everyone on this call this morning. Your pre-event surveys revealed that over 97% of you are optimistic that an individual can make a difference in the work against racism in Lancaster. And I believe this too. That's why I'm here. So David, can you start us off, please, with the agenda and the norms?
Yes. So these are norms that we would use whether we're in person or whether we are virtual. And it's to listen to each other and remember to breathe, and to honor confidentiality. So we might hear something in the big session, we might hear something in the breakout rooms that people are choosing to take a chance and tell us, and we want to make sure that we only share that in an appropriate way. We would all pledge our best intent, which we know is not always it's not always adequate. And sometimes even with our best intent, we still can cause harm. And so just understand that we might have an impact. So if you keep your camera on as much as possible, that way we can sort of make face, we can kind of read body language a little bit, utilize the chat for questions and comments. And this is a big thing for all of our sessions, which is to expect to experience non-closure and just accept that. So there are times when these things will not come to a good conclusion. The dialogue will go on, and there probably will be discomfort as we challenge each other's assumptions on various things. So the agenda today is, as you can see, we're going to hear a speech from, I think, 1852. We're going to talk about implicit bias. We're going to hear from three members of a panel who will give us some firsthand information and data and emotion. And then we will break into discussion rooms to talk about that. We'll briefly review some definitions and a model or two, and then talk about anti-racist zones, which is what can we do? Where do we see ourselves, and what do we take as next steps?
Thank you, David. So we just had the July 4th weekend, and if you spent any time on social media, you might have seen Frederick Douglass's "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." It's from 1852. David, you're not going to be on my trivia team if you can't pull that fact, so you are cut from our team. But it is from 1852, and I just put the text in the chat. He gave this speech to the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society, and unfortunately this weekend in Rochester, the statue of Frederick Douglass was vandalized. So even though this was 150 years ago, there is still modern issues being connected to that. So I'm going to go ahead and share this video. It is James Earl Jones reciting it, and even if you have seen it before, even last weekend, I know I always get something new every time I see it.
Fellow citizens, pardon me, and allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers, is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. There's not a nation of the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour forth a stream, a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and the crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
That was James.
So I feel like that's important for today, one, because of how true the words ring, even so many years later, and also because it's important to understand that we don't all see things the same way, even an American institution like the July 4th weekend. So thank you for that, and I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Murph.
Thanks so much. And I am going to take you now to my screen. I want to talk a little bit about implicit bias. And Adam so well stated that, you know, people have different experiences, different opinions, different lived events that give them different perceptions and form our thinking and our opinions and our work. In fact, what I would argue is I would go with what Phil Slater said, which was man is unique among the animals in his absolute practicability to know things that are not true. It's part of what makes us human, and that's the good part, and it's the crazy, maddening part. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how our brains are not really our best friends. And to do that, I'm going to start with a mental exercise. So I'm going to show you an image, and then I'm going to come off and let you share with me what you see. All right? So what do you see in this image? In fact, why don't we just go ahead and share. What do you see? I see some things on the chat. What do you see? Thank you, Lydia. Okay, I see good, good and evil. How many of you, can you see two words? Did you see more than one word? Yes? Yeah, it had both the word good and the word evil. And it is both. Both of them actually live together. So let me ask you this, and what do you see in this next image? Put your response in the chat. Okay, I see a person's face. Man with glasses. Some of you are seeing the word liar. Do you see the word liar? You kind of have to turn your head sideways to look at it because it's written on the angle. Do you see both a person and the word liar? Again, both of those things exist in the same place. And what's interesting is if you saw good and if you saw evil, I saw on the chat that some of you eventually saw both words. That's good. Our brains will adjust to things, and the good and evil one, what you see is dependent on how you're hardwired. But the liar and the face one are more about our social experiences. So what you know is a function of both nature and nurture. Which brings me to, I want to go over a couple of quick definitions so that we're all on the same page. Let's talk a little bit. What is bias? Bias is an automatic inclination, a prejudice. It's an expectation. It is something, it's a conclusion that we come to sometimes without thinking about it. Often, in fact, without thinking about it. Over time, bias becomes automatic, and then we call it implicit bias. So it becomes so automatic that we think it's true. It becomes so automatic, we're not even aware that we're having those thoughts, that those, we think it's truth, but it's actually a choice that we've made along the way. So I'm going to offer to you a different definition of privilege, which means if I'm in a privileged group, I never have to question my assumptions. I never have to look at whether my experience is true for everyone, because I assume that what I experience is the only way to experience the world. And so what we do in privilege, the definition that I'm offering you, is a way to think about privilege as being comfortable with our implicit biases. So we'll talk about more about this in a second, but I want to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to present to you a series of letters in 3 boxes, and I'm going to present to you in a certain order. I want you to take a look at the series of letters and tell me what color the text is. Okay? Is everybody ready? All good? Thumbs up? Okay. All right, so let's go. Adam, I'm going to have you mute them, please. Okay. Ready? All right, the color of the letters. What was that like? I hear people laughing.
Oh, I couldn't see the box long enough. It was only up there for a second.
Okay. Other thoughts? Somebody want a second chance?
Yes.
Yes, please.
I'm going to mute you all. So this is what we had before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a second version of this, okay? And again, what I want you to do, and you're on mute, but I want you to out loud tell me, what is the color of the letters that you see? Okay? Now I'm going to give it a second before I start. So maybe it'll pop up more readily on your screen. Okay, let's go. How'd it go this time?
Great.
Did you do better that time?
Yeah.
Did anybody have any issues with that one?
No, no doubt.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We got this whole bias thing. Our brains are working on all cylinders, right? Let's do one more version and see what you think. Again, I'm going to mute you all. I want you to say out loud what you see. But just the color of the letters. All right, let's go. Let me give it a second before I start it so you can, your computer can load it up.
Green, red, purple, brown, yellow.
How did it go this time? How'd it go?
Not too good. I was reading the text instead of reading the color.
Yes. What happens is, how many people found that you were reading? Yeah, and thank you for the joyful noise that someone is sharing with us in the background.
That's sarcasm.
Pardon? Yes. So I want in the chat room. How many of you had trouble with that last one? That you found yourself saying the word and not the letter. And yes, Colleen, the words did not match the color. And it is confusing, Nat. And so that's why the second one was a piece of cake. The words matched the color. So what we're actually seeing is a place, it's a something called the Stroop Test, which was created in 1935. And what it does is it relates the reaction time between an automatic thought and a thinking thought, okay? So this is the reason it's harder is because your different parts of your brain are working at cross purposes. Let me kind of put it this way. When you hear something and practice something, it becomes pretty automatic, and it goes to sections of the back of the brain. The names of the brain sections don't matter today, but it becomes pretty routine. We pull it up automatically, it comes up, and we don't really think too much about it. The thinking part of the brain is more in the front, and that part of the brain is trying to have different is trying to, I'm asking you to do something that's not natural and it's not automatic. So the space between your thought and being able to get it out word-wise is the Stroop Effect. And what we put in automatically and what we practice is going to be a function of things that we were born into, things that we've experienced, and bigger things than what we have control over necessarily. Maybe what we're exposed to in the media or what we read or the people we hang out with, but all of these things are put together and they interact in such a way that we think it's automatic. We think we don't have a choice about it, but it's actually not automatic. It's what we call implicit bias. What's important to all of us in this room is implicit bias is connected to interviewing success. So if somebody presents what they call a whitened resume, they're 2 times as likely to get a call back for an interview. 81% of Black adults have been in situations where the color of their skin has kept them from succeeding. The coronavirus is hitting Black and brown people 3 times, they're 3 times more likely to be infected and twice as likely to die from this thing. And pregnant women who are Black are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy than their white counterparts. The justice system is not blind. It treats Black and brown people very differently and much significantly worse. And in fact, what we've seen is that Blacks and Latinos are 50% more likely to have some kind of physical interaction with police than white people. It's not without a cost. This is something that you're going to want to think about there, and Adam will put this on the chat so that you can figure out where you are, but it's not costless. So we need to rethink. In the past, we thought racism was just something old, but it's not. It's here. And we used to say, as long as I'm not a hater, I'm good. But it's possible to love my in-group too much, that I actually keep people out without intending to consciously. And instead of it's not my fault, it's a recognition that we're all part of the problem. So what do? How do you get out of this? You listen more, you talk to people, you give people a voice and actually listen to somebody's experience. And it starts with commitments. One of the handouts that you're going to have will talk about commitments that you can make today, about getting educated, getting more exposure to these things. Talk to people who don't look like you. Lobby for the greater good, and I don't know, maybe even allow your people off for election day. Create a living wage. All of these things are important. They're a step in the right direction, and it's part of a bigger picture about the beauty of anti-racism. The opposite of racism is anti-racism. It's not neutral. So you don't have to get it perfectly today. It's a fight, it's a journey, and it's a way of moving forward and moving all of us forward with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. That's the perfect segue to bring us into our panel discussion. So I am so pleased to welcome 3 residents, Jasmine, Tyler, and Tony. These are local folks who have agreed to share a story or 2 about an example of racism or bias that they have experienced here in Lancaster business. how it made them feel, and how it has affected where they shop or dine, or other choices they make about how to spend their money. And I do need to say that sadly, it was not difficult to find folks for this panel. So I am going to remind panelists that the session is being recorded, and I'm going to ask Jasmine to begin. Jasmine, if you can, just let the audience know how long you've lived in Lancaster, and what you would like to share with us about your story.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for this opportunity. I have been living in Lancaster for 33 years. I had to think about my age. I've been here all of my life. I grew up on the outskirts of Millersville. So the Gabriel Park neighborhood was where I was raised in a two-parent household. And I matriculated through the school district of Lancaster and went on to study at Millersville University. So I've been here, I've been in the community. My family has lived in Lancaster City and both on the outskirts of Lancaster City. What I'm gonna discuss with you this morning is something that I talk about frequently within my own family network or my group of friends that we share the similar, experiences. But I want to share it this morning with you, and I'm excited to do so because I've never been able to share it with a group of people that actually have a hand at this table that I'm going to be talking about. So growing up in Lancaster, I've been keenly aware that I am Black. When I was younger, just going to school, you get reactions from teachers all the time that they didn't notice you and you're the only Black person that's in the classroom. So you think to yourself, how did you not notice me? And it would be one simple thing that I grew up to know is the changing of hair. So over the years, I became very subconscious about my hair, not only that it's being touched often, that people don't recognize when you switch up the hair, but that when you go to businesses, they don't have products or things that really cater to your hair or things that you can actually put on. So going downtown Lancaster, there are a lot of little cute boutiques. I now have big hair. I walked into a store one time to buy something that I was like, oh, they have cute bows. My friend told me that they have cute bows. I walked in and the lady was just like, I don't think anything will work for you here. And she didn't even know if I was there to purchase it for myself, for a friend, for my child, anything. And I was just like, okay. I said, I was just like, what do you mean? And she was just like, well, you have like that big crazy hair going on. And it drew me back so far to think about all of my childhood and even we're in the workplace where people have always almost made it invisible to who I was because I could not be recognized if I changed up my hair. And then to go into a place that sold something that should be for anybody, I thought, and to immediately be greeted at the door and told that it would not work for me. So that was something that I encountered. I honestly left the store because I was just like, I didn't want to spend my money. And then shortly after that, Issa Rae came up with, she said in a quote, she said, I'm rooting for everybody Black. And I felt that to the core of me after that. I actually switched up my clothing. I did not like to wear t-shirts a lot. And now my people, we sell a lot of t-shirts and I will buy t-shirts. I also noticed going back to hair, I worked with the homeless population a lot. And people are so generous with donating products. But our homeless population is not only constricted to the white population, it also serves our Latinos, it also serves our Native Americans, it serves our Black community. Our hair is different. And so I had a conversation with our donors at one point and I was like, hey, is it possible that you can get products that our homeless children, our children in transition can truly use? And it baffled me that the people that I were talking to were in their 50s, their 60s, some 70, and they didn't get it. They were like, wait, why? And it's something that I dealt with since 3 years old, that these people that were almost 70 could not understand that we deal with this every day, that we deal with these differences with this simple struggle every day, lotions that will not work for us. So we walk into businesses and stuff is such water-based, and we can't use that. and I talk to my friends and I'm like, did they do research? Like, do they know that this stuff it won't work for our skin? So it must not be a place for us because they have not done the research to make sure that it's an inclusive product that we can use. I can go on and on about stories that have occurred, but I also want to just touch on a thing about walking into places and not seeing people that look like reflective of our community. So I walk into places and there's nobody working, they're reflective of the community. And one time I got comfortable with one of the owners downtown and I said, hey, why are all the workers here? They're all white. I was just like, this store seems very eccentric. I feel like there's other people that could work here. And she said, they don't apply here. And my question was, so they're not applying, but you're also not seeking them out. If we're looking for students that are educated because you're worried about theft, which seems to be an overarching thing because I walk in stores and they grab their products or they walk and follow you. Why are we not going to Franklin and Marshall where the population of our Black students is ever growing and they're ever educated there? And then I question, why are we not being more specific with, we talk about our poverty level and we complain and they say things about people living on poverty. Why are we not being intentional with our businesses with going out and seeing those mothers that are struggling and asking them to come in and work at your workplace? So it's been very difficult to walk into stores downtown to support stores and restaurants downtown when I do not see people there that look like me working there when I know that it's possible. It's not impossible. We cannot truly sit here in this day and age, 2020, and say that people are not applying when we know how to seek. We know when we need something, we know how to go out and look. So that's kind of my little tidbit. I don't want to take all the room. I'm a speech comm major, so I can talk a lot. I'm a Baptist, so I'll share the room in the space, and I hope that something that I said resonates.
Thank you, Jasmine, so much. I appreciate that. And if you can stay on, so I am going to let our two other speakers jump in, and then we'll just be conscious of time. So Tony, I would like to invite you to tell us how long you've been in Lancaster and what you've experienced here.
Good morning. My name is Tony Collins. I'm a business executive. I've been in public relations for more than 20 years. The last decade or so, I've been in the C-suite. My clients include multinational corporations, major universities, professional athletes, and celebrities. I've been in Lancaster now about 9 months, and one of the things that I did before moving to Lancaster was do some research and found that Lancaster is described as a place that is open, progressive, diverse, and diverse, and that I would be comfortable here in terms of my business practices. And I guess I would start by saying I didn't find that to be true, have not found that to be true. My experiences here, there are 3 experiences I want to relate. The first one is that coming from Washington, D.C., generally speaking, people are business casual, but I found that when I was dressed that way here in Lancaster, that people shied away from me. There was always the instance of getting on an elevator, generally with white women who would clutch their purses or shrink back into the back of the elevator, shy away from me in parking garages. One week coming back from Washington, D.C. after a business meeting, I was dressed in a coat and tie, and suddenly it was like I had just been discovered. People would say hello, reach out, smile, make eye contact. So it was very obvious to me that if I wasn't dressed in traditional business attire, I was being treated differently. The second thing that I remember is taking advantage of some of the shopping in Lancaster. I was visiting an antique shop on Queen Street, and I walked in and there was a section called Black Americana, which attracted me. And I went back to look at what they had, and what I remember most distinctly about it was that they had a porcelain figurine that was essentially what we used to call a lawn jockey. They had a porcelain figurine that was blackface, exaggerated Black characteristics, and it was a bank, and they listed that as Black Americana. I haven't seen that kind of art or artistic artifacts in years. Certainly didn't expect to find it in Lancaster, but there they were selling it and bragging about it being Black Americana. The last thing I would point to is one of the things that Lancaster brags about is its diversity in terms of restaurant and foods and its authenticity. My brother, who's a former bank CEO, came to visit with his family. We made reservations. We went to a local restaurant. The overwhelming feeling that I had while eating there at that restaurant was that they were very unhappy that 4 Black people were sitting at their best table in the middle of the dining room and taking up that space. There are too many microaggressions to begin to list, but I left that restaurant feeling that they certainly didn't appreciate our business. We're happy when we left, and I've made it a point not to return. So the last thing I'd like to share is that I was asked once if I was going to move my business to Lancaster, and my practice is a little bit unique, but as I responded to that person and I said, business goes where it's invited and stays where it's welcome. And I, at this point, would not use that description to describe Lancaster. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you sharing your experience, as frustrating as it is to hear. And I do want to invite one more panelist, Tyler, to please share, if you can, Tyler, your experience with regard to bias and or racism in Lancaster business.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hold on, let me turn my mask off. I'm sorry, I'm at work actually. In the YWCA building right at this moment. My name is Tyler Tony. I have lived in Lancaster for 34 years. My family was raised on Ann Street. I have went to Caskey High School through the school district of Lancaster. Been a patron of many businesses that have come and gone over the years. An experience I can refer to is actually recently and some things that have happened in my past. If you notice, I have a beard. I took my mask off so you could see it. A lot of places I go into, I get profiled and mistreated and microaggressions of all states and kinds just because I have a beard. You know, I've been approached by people asking me, am I Muslim or anything like that, just because I have a beard. I have people, mostly older white females, cluster purses. I've had people walk farther away from me because I had a hood on, just because of the color of my skin. They don't know me. They don't know my mentality, who I am. If you know anything about me, I'm a loving person. I work with kids currently. I've been working with kids since I was 18 years old. I've worked in drug and alcohol rehabs for adolescent males from age 12 to 20. I've been working with kids for as long as I can remember. It's what I love to do. And it's hard to deal with these kinds of situations on such a regular basis, to a point where I kind of shy away from going downtown to shop or purchase anything if I can help it. I try not to eat downtown or purchase anything from downtown. It's extremely rare when I even venture into that area to purchase things. Here at the YWCA in our after school program, well, summer enrichment program now, there are times where we actually, before the COVID virus, would take the kids downtown. And even going downtown, you would have people look at us differently because we're walking in groups that are very diverse. It's not just all Caucasian children or minority children. It's a decent mixture, on top of the fact that sometimes we do split up into smaller groups. And a lot of those times I'll have Caucasian children with me, and you can just see the dirty looks people will give me because I look like the way I look, and have the students with me that I have, and people give me dirty looks or look twice just because I'm Black and I'm walking with students that don't look like I've had people ask me, you know, are these kids okay? What's going on? Even though I have my YWCA shirt on and everything, it doesn't matter. So it can be very deflating and frustrating. I have 5 children, well, 6. One is actually married now, but 5 in my home, and I never take my kids downtown for any reason because I don't want them to be mistreated. I don't want my wife and I to be mistreated. We've been disrespected, mistreated in many different ways. But what I can say is that there have been times outside of those instances where we have encountered good meaning people downtown, good businesses downtown. Unfortunately, as Jasmine said, I don't see a lot of people downtown that look like me. So it makes it not as welcoming for me to go into certain shops because you don't know the kind of attitudes and microaggressions you might encounter just by walking into a business. You know, I may walk into a business for kids clothing downtown. I have kids, so they're not always with me, and I get dirty looks. You know, what are you doing in here? You know, stuff like that. It happens. But there are also companies and businesses that have shown open arms to people that look like me. I've seen it, whether or not just be with me, but other people there being treated fairly. So these kinds of things are very troubling, but also I believe it can change if people are willing to open their eyes to what's really going on and not to judge people, you know, by the way they look. That's what I would say is don't judge people just because of the way they look. You never know the merit of somebody's soul, their heart, who they are, just based on their appearance. As Tony stated, you know, I like to dress appropriately for wherever I go. And even that I feel kind of judged by. I have to dress a certain way. I have to keep my beard as groomed as possible just so people don't judge me in a negative manner, because that kind of stuff happens so often where I feel on the defensive on such a regular basis because my beard or because I have a bald head with it, and people attribute bald heads and beards to people who are Muslim, and because there's so many different prejudices towards people that are Muslim or celebrate that religion, you know, that people treat people who look that way like that. So, you know, I would just hope that the business in Lancaster would be more diverse in the people that they hire. There are people out there who would love to work at those kinds of places, especially places that are diverse, that are very open to everybody. You know, I've lived in Lancaster my whole life, and I can absolutely say that this place is not as diverse as far as the treatment of people that look like me and that are minorities. It's not been as diverse as people may give it credit for. There are patches and places in Lancaster that are that way, but for the most part, it's not that way. You know, wherever you go, not just downtown businesses all over are like that. And unfortunately, it's something that's been here since as long as I can remember. That's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tyler. I really appreciate you sharing your experience. I am quite taken by the generational aspect that we're hearing. And what we're going to do now, folks, I want to thank the panelists again, Jasmine, Tony, and Tyler. You all can be excused. The rest of us are going to go into breakout rooms that you'll be assigned, and there'll be a facilitator in each one. And we have about 10 minutes to reflect on what we just heard and have a little discussion about that. So Adam, you can go ahead and put us into the rooms. People don't need to do anything. I think it happens automatically.
Sure. Panel or facilitators will have 15 minutes, and you will get a 2-minute countdown just as a heads up.
Thank you.
Here we go. Thank you, everyone. So as we're returning, Kevin was making a wonderful point in my room when we got cut off, and I just wanted to end this little section with that. And he was talking about how change essentially needs to come from the top down. So there are plenty of people on the ground that are doing this work and trying to influence, create a more inclusive community from the bottom up, that grassroots campaign. But it also needs to come from the top. So Kevin, I appreciate that final word there, and sorry you got cut off.
Thank you for the summary.
So we are going to share a few definitions with you here. Just double checking, can people see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
We'll be going over racial equity, something called the pyramid of white supremacy, and something we're calling acts of implicit bias. So racial equity and equity in general is essentially meeting people where they are and giving them what they need, not just giving everyone equally. So if I think about schooling, I know that if I give everyone the same amount of food, of books, etc., there will be students that need more. So equity is giving that more. So I offer this image because I think it is a nice view of what equity looks like. So you have this from the giving tree, of course. In the top left, you have inequality. So you have the boy on the right side that has nothing. Then you have equality, where each one gets the same level of support. They both have the same level of ladder, which is great. But then you have equity, where the one boy has a taller ladder. And that's kind of what we've been talking about for the past few years. We've moved from equality to equity. But I also would challenge our community to fix the tree. So if the tree is bent, let's try to fix that tree. Because it's also more helpful for all of us, because then we can give the same amount of support to everyone if we fix the root cause of the problem. So that's just something I'd like to leave with you, that equity is great. We need to be giving people what they need, but let's also try to fix that tree.
This model, I think, connects with the kinds of maybe some of the surprises that we heard from the panel, and some of the ideas that are automatically happening in our brains. We're making assumptions about what is appropriate in our world, what works and what doesn't work. And so here at the top, you see things that are socially unacceptable. People will acknowledge that racist jokes, slurs, swastikas, hate crimes, lynching, these are terrible things. And when people heard the term white supremacy, they would have connected it in the past to the KKK or neo-Nazis. But I have been actually encouraged a little bit in the last 6 weeks that there are business people, organizations using the term white supremacy and using it in a way that includes all of the assumptions, all of the things that support a hierarchy of whiteness over everything else, that we put other labels on, and we take for granted that we're not doing anything wrong, we're not doing anything harmful. And so in this illustration, which you'll get a copy of, there are things that, so the tree that Adam just talked about, we know our education funding, depending on property taxes, is not a just system, but it's gone on for decades. So in the interest of time, I'll move on.
Thank you, David. The final thing we want to go over today is this idea of acts of implicit bias. So small examples, and you heard them in the panel. For me, it's I'm constantly asked where I am from, constantly. For Black customers, they often will walk into a store and the money is clutched, or they are followed, or they are watched a little more closely. And also in the language that we use, things like Indian giver, or even saying that I got gypped. These are rooted in racism, these statements. So these are things that we will do unconsciously. So these are examples of that, where that implicit bias comes from. Oftentimes this is called a microaggression. We've seen that phrase many times, even in the pre-survey that we sent, and even in talking in our discussion rooms, I've heard that term a couple of times. I just challenge you to ask yourself, that term microaggression, who does it comfort by saying it is a small act? So it is only micro to the person who's actually perpetuating the act. To the receiver of that, it's actually just still plain old racism. It's still plain old sexism. It's still plain old homophobia. So when we're thinking about microaggressions, often we will say, oh, it's just a small thing. It's not that big a deal. They'll get over it. But to the victim, it is something that is constant, and is often referred to as like death by 1,000 cuts. So this is something to be mindful of. So we have a lot that we kind of went over today. And there's a lot to take in. And this was only 90 minutes, right? So we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I just want to show this to you, and I want to be mindful that we will send all of this to you in the future in a follow-up email. But this is called our anti-racist zones. And the point of this is that we can't do everything tomorrow. And one of our norms was that to accept and expect non-closure. But if you look at this model, this graphic, many of us are in the fear zone, and that's okay. But this is kind of hoping that we move into the learning zone, that we can move eventually into the growth zone. And you'll notice that all these statements start with I, because all this stuff starts with us internally, I. And then the final thing I'll say is that we can be in and out of these zones on any given day, on any given moment. So that's just something to keep in mind. So when Dr. Murph offered up that quote about becoming anti-racist, isn't about just eliminating all racism from your heart. It's really about acknowledging it and working to change that. The other thing I'd like to show us is this is the document that we are going to be sending you. So it has a number of first steps that you can take. So the Harvard Implicit Bias Test is there. Some questions for your organization, looking at white supremacy culture, and then from the National Museum of African American History and Culture, how to talk about race. There are a number of articles, a number of podcasts, and a number of videos, and some social media accounts to follow. So this is just like a one-pager that you will be sent with some very simple steps that you can take next. So thank you for everyone for your time, and I'm going to pass it on to Stacy.
Thank you, Adam. I really do want to thank everyone for participating, Marshall and Ann for inviting us and making this go so smoothly. There is a link in the chat for folks to complete a brief post-event survey, and we'd be grateful if you can do that because we want to always be improving. There will be a follow-up email from Ann with the video, the resource that Adam just showed you, and then on July 21, so in a couple of weeks at 8:30, we have agreed as part of our commitment to the city to come back for just a Q&A with the folks on this call or other folks who have watched the video later to talk about what did you learn, what questions do you still have, what's next, how can we support you. This is available for any community member, and Ann will send you those details as well. So here at YW, how can we help? Bring your ideas, I'm open. Whether it's a joint job fair, an individual discussion, some other idea, let us know how we can be part of deeper engagement and solutions. Thank you, Marshall.
Great, Stacy, thank you. And thanks to your great team, David, Dr. Lucia, and Adam. And thank you for bringing the panelists too. I mean, even for me, that was a huge eye opener. So we have much work to do. But I still believe that we have a great community here in Lancaster, and I think together we can move forward with great change. So I want to thank everyone for participating today. The interest and your intentionality to do this is just sort of speaks to the strength of our community. We look forward to continuing this conversation in 2 weeks. So please complete the post survey and look for the invitation for the next session, and we will see everyone then. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.